Hi, I'm John Hodoway with Nighthawk Custom Training Academy. This is probably the first in maybe a 2 or 3 part series, and I really want to just visit with you about a couple things that I think are important. I look out here today and I see a movement, and the movement has many names. It could be called preppers, survivalists, tinfoil hat brigade, some people would label them. We could be calling it end of the world doomsday scenario. There's lots of names out there, and I don't think that the names always do justice to what's really going on. I've taken a look at this. It's on the History Channel. You can see it talking about what happens after society ends as we know it. And let me just start off and say this. I believe that we do have a thin veneer of politeness that is on our society today. I think that when you look at all the polls right now, we have an all-time fear of our government as we've ever had it. We have distrust that they have the ability to act or do much of anything. And I think that we also have a suspicion of other people that are different from us. I mean, we have a very polarized society. You can call it red versus blue. You can call it haves versus have-nots. There's a million ways to slice it, but our society tends to be dividing us up into groups. But when that happens, when we stop being Americans and we start being divided into subgroups, and that thin veneer of politeness wears off, we have a tendency to throw things, break things, and do other nasty things to one another. And I think that any number of things could cause some disruption in the way that society functions today. However, I believe that there are certain misconceptions that go on out there. And let me share a few of them with you. I think as a whole, there's really 3 or 4 things that you have to consider. They're really pretty simple, and I think that any plan is better than no plan. And I also think that sometimes perfection is the killer of good. So let's start off with food, clothing, shelter, maybe defense of those things, maybe defense is in those things, and maybe really communicating with those that we love. Now, I also think that there's a fault in some of the planning that goes on. Now let me share with you what I think the fault is. There's the idea that right now we are living in a dynamic environment, and that there's change that goes on, and this environment is dynamic, and that it is going to spin into some type of de-evolutionary event, meaning natural disaster, man-made disaster, war, famine, pestilence, the 7 horsemen of the apocalypse, whatever you want to put on it. And that once that happens, this situation will no longer be dynamic. It's static. Forever from that moment forward, whatever that worst case scenario is, we have to be prepared to live in that worst case scenario from that moment forward. Well, it's not really supported by a few thousand years of written history. Yes, things get bad, but it is a dynamic bad, meaning that there is change going on and there's things that are happening. So for instance, it's highly unlikely that any of us will be alive who are viewing this video if we have such a cataclysmic event that we actually lose our knowledge of how to do things. Now, I agree completely that we may have a cataclysmic event that makes electric power somewhat scarce, or that makes communications scarce, or that makes growing food scarce. But farmers are not going to lose the ability to grow food. They're going to lose the ability maybe to transport it, maybe to grow as much of it, but we'll still know how to grow food. We'll be planting victory gardens like we had before. Things will be happening. So what we have to do, I think, is our preparation has to look at dynamic. Yes, something cataclysmic will happen, but what do we do from that point forward? And that it will not be bad forever. So, in terms of prepping, I think that you look at 2 events. The possible and the probable. Possible, probable. Is it possible that we could have such a horrible event that it would take years and years and years and years and years to recover? Yes, that is possible. What is probable that'll happen in the next 12 to 36 months is that we'll have something that'll be cataclysmic for a week or 2. Now, consider this for a minute. If you're completely unprepared, that week or two can be as devastating as years and years and years. But if you simply can make it through 3 to 7 days, things will eventually begin to get better. That is what I believe will happen. We will see things happen that will be dynamic. For instance, if we have a natural disaster, I'm not saying that the cavalry will come over the hill. I'm saying that neighbors will begin to meet each other again. We'll be bonding in smaller societies, and we'll pool our resources together. Is it going to be horrible for people? Yes, it will be. But we'll make it through that. It will be change. It will be dynamic. It will be different. Now, this is what I believe. Your results may vary. I will assure you of a couple of things. One, I don't own a tinfoil hat. I do not believe that the government is beaming filthy thoughts to my head and I have to protect myself with a tinfoil hat. 2, I don't own a drop leg holster. 3, I don't own a pair of Ray-Bans. 4, I've never been in the sandbox and been a mercenary and fought for a living. But what I do believe is that through some simple prep items, both on your person, in your vehicle, and in your home, you can very easily make it through the possible or the probable. But the difference is, make it through the probable before you make it through the possible. So, in the next series of videos, I'd like to talk about what I carry, what I believe is necessary for those things to make it through the probable. Nighthawk Custom, out.